Thank you so much, Juliana, for being with us and for sharing this space with the Pecs community. Juliana Merçon is a professor at the Universidad de Veracruz in Mexico. And you just gave a talk about the role of transdisciplinary research for transitioning into a good Anthropocene. Transdisciplinarity is one of the most aspirational goals when it comes to social ecological research. We would like to know what are the main problems that you have connected and that you recognize to achieve this.
Well, there are various difficulties and challenges we encounter when organizing a team, a transdisciplinary team, and building the bonds, like cultivating the necessary bonds for making collaboration successful. Perhaps we could think there are different stages when we're talking about transdisciplinary work. And from the start, some of the main challenges would relate to attitude and what is needed in order to even want to start a collaboration in that sense, like working with different sectors, with actors from different sectors, social realities, from different organization logics, and who might even share or might not share goals or define problems in different ways, do require a type of willingness and a certain type of attitude that unfortunately is not as common as we would like that attitude to be. Perhaps because we're not so used to collaborating in our competitive societies. We tend to see the other as someone who's very different and with whom we don't really share much in terms of what we could achieve together. So what type of attitudes could favor transdisciplinary processes? First of all, being able to listen and to navigate through other people's ways of thinking, making all that effort to translate other ways of understanding the world into our own terms in a way that would not suppress their difference, but creating then dialogue in a really meaningful way. That is an important challenge, and no one is an expert in that. We can always learn more and more to actively listen to others. And that is a necessary path towards building trust. There is no transdisciplinary process without a certain level, even if it's a basic level of trust. Trust is usually has to do with empathy to start with, but it is always something that can be further developed and consolidated throughout the process. And at the start, that seed of trust has to be there. And throughout the process, like once you are together already, collaborating with people who think very differently, who may name their goals in a different way. Something that is very important as well, which is a challenge, and in many cases it is a problem, is having the clarity to define roles, to understand and what the problem that brings us together is, and how we can name it in a way with a common language that allows us to feel like, okay, we all understand what this is about, where we're aiming at, and that is also a process that is quite challenging, like coming to agreements on how we explain and co-create, co-produce a common ground about the main problem we're facing and designing the means to further and deeper understand that problem and come up with solutions to tackle.
When it comes to finding these specific terms that we can use for leveling the ground, for talking the same language, there has been a lot of discussion about the term or the use of the term community during Pecs. And although it is a really convenient term, the term itself hides different values, visions, interests, issues of power as well, and different relations, as you're mentioning. In your experience, how can collaboration with communities manage this reality of handling different perspectives, values, power relations, and so on?
Well, you're very right that community is a term that, in a sense, perhaps we idealize community because community comes from common unity. Like it is something that is united and might even seem, depending on the approach, some people might think of communities as monolithical, like very uniform, homogeneous entities. And like you say, they are certainly not homogeneous. Communities are very complex, and they do entail a great variety of worldviews in many cases, and values, and it depends, of course, on the scale, what type of community we're talking about. Something that is very important here is to acknowledge that communities are not as given, are not as already made as we tend to think. A community is a process, an ongoing process, always, and how the level of togetherness or the cohesion may vary throughout time, and going back to the reflection on transdisciplinary processes, they are also very much related to the creation of a certain community, a small community of practice that will integrate different views and different ways of operating, and how that small community of practitioners and scientists, in people who do hold different worldviews, can come together and help move, start other epistemic and ethico-political processes within a larger community that has a lot to do with how first that very small community of researchers can build trust within the broader community and learn, very respectively, learn from the broader community with which they are relating now, in order to help contribute to transitioning within the problematic situation. So yes, I think it is important to think about what we mean by communities and how we can actually, if not integrate in a very logic, understandable way, all those different visions, values, goals, at least how we can navigate within those various differences in order to once and again consolidate a common ground that allows us to move beyond our problematic situation. And how we do that, again, that goes back to a lot of attitudes that we need to learn to cultivate. Knowledge, of course, plays a very important role there, but knowledge is framed within an ethical paradigm in that case, which has to be built because, like I was saying, most of us coming to these collaboration communities, small communities, without having practiced very close collaboration throughout our lives, and it's a never learning process. So having that sensitivity and that openness to learn and to co-produce new ways of knowing is fundamental in that process.
Juliana, regarding that, there's a growing consensus that for global sustainability, the voice of the unheard must be taken into consideration when it comes to sustainability policy design. Why do you think grassroots movements can provide the platform for pushing global sustainability policies?
Yeah, for many reasons. So grassroots experiences, initiatives, they are very connected to all those voices that in many cases are not heard on upper levels, like by institutions and different arenas within society. They, in many cases, they are already applying what we want to see in a much larger scale. They live more sustainable and sustainably. In many cases, they are those initiatives that come from small or not even so small communities in straight connection with organizations from civil society, individual researchers. There's so many wonderful experiences that are already being the world we want to see, no? Like in a broader scale, they are living in a much more just and sustainable way at a very small scale. They have a lot to contribute to having a much broader vision. So one, because in many cases they have already found ways to make that dream of a global sustainable world, like a sustainable world. They have the concreteness of practice going on. So some can provide, or most of those experiences can actually provide much inspiration for many other experiences of that sort. So exchanging at a more horizontal level is crucial. It can make a huge difference for experiences, new initiatives, like people who are coming together and can learn from each other. That is definitely a very important way of sharing and learning from these experiences. And then the whole matter of scaling up, we have a lot to learn from those experiences as well. Personally, I think it is a huge challenge because we're talking here about how we can translate those concrete practices into policy and scientific knowledge, and at the same time maintain their force, what is really fundamental of those experiences. And when we talk about translation among sectors and levels within society, there is always something that is gained in terms of novelty within the new language, of that very sector and sphere. But we also talk about some sort of loss, because you just can't have it in a very intact way. Like you can't reproduce what is a concrete, complex practice into a language that is abstract, that generalize, that theorize those practices, talking about scientific knowledge, or in terms of policy, there's the effort to transform those experiences into political frames, programs that will, in a very positive cases, allow them to flourish, to continue to grow. But I think this is something we should study a bit more, how something gets lost within those necessary translations, and what is actually gained when we do that, how that particular language can actually empower and help those experiences to multiply in ways that won't challenge what is really unique and inspiring of those experiences. So I think there is a whole question of commensurability, and how again and again, and that's the eternal work within the academic sphere arena, like how we can learn from those concrete experiences, study them, transform them into knowledge that can be shared widely and from a different parallel process, how policymakers can do a similar thing without making those very experiences lose something in the process, without coming to a very abstract sort of language that would not contribute in a very important, fruitful way to those same experiences or to new ones.
Fantastic. Finally, we have been asking all these questions to our keynote speakers because we want to try to find out a little bit more about the personal experience. And Juliana, you've been living here in Mexico for quite a bit, quite some years now. What is your favorite place in Mexico?
It's impossible to answer that. I love Jalapa, where I live. Well, I live in the cloud forest, like very close to Arriba, in a very beautiful place. It's just lush, so much green around me. I live, my house is in the midst of a coffee grove, and yeah, it's a place that makes me very happy because it's so incredibly biodiverse, and the culture around me just makes me feel like with people who say hello, how are you? Like I leave my home and go for a walk, and everyone greets everyone. So there's a sense of community. I feel very, very connected to that place for its beauty and for its people. They're amazingly welcoming and warm. So maybe because of those very everyday connections that I can build there. Yeah, it's probably my favorite place, although I love many, many, many places in Mexico.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Juliana, for
You're most
helping
welcome.
us with this.
Thank you.